Welcome to Uncover the Human, where every conversation revolves around enhancing all the connections in our lives.
Whether that's with our families, co-workers, or even ourselves.
When we can be our authentic selves, magic happens. This is Alex Cullimore.
And this is Cristina Amigoni.
Let's dive in.
This episode includes our interpretations of copyrighted works done by the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, or iPEC. Hello and welcome back to this episode of Uncover the Human. We are going to continue our series today on iPEC's core dynamics series. We have gotten into the disciplines now, the actual practices that help put the core discipline or core dynamics into action. We did awareness before. That one's a super powerful one, and it builds really well into this one, the second discipline, which is probably the hardest one to actually accomplish and the one that will unlock so many things if you could get to a good state of acceptance. Acceptance is the second discipline. So, Cristina, where do you want to start on acceptance? There are so many things we can say about this.
Well, I think we should probably start on how we've now managed to procrastinate on actually starting this recording for an hour, which it's a good demonstration of how hard the acceptance discipline it is. Even accepting to talk about it, it's a good reason to look at all the shiny objects and not do it. Yeah, like I would say, it's the hardest one for me, at least. It was the hardest one to understand. Well, actually, I would take that back. It's easy to understand. It's the hardest one to feel the understanding deep enough where you can actually do it. And understanding it logically, yes, it's there. Of course, yes, accept. There's some back and forth. There's some internal turmoil on some of the parts of it, but the actual true acceptance of accepting that it is a crucial discipline to increase performance, to reach mastery, to even move to the next disciplines, that takes, at least for me, it's taken years.
Yeah.
It's a true discipline. It's a true practice. It's a true reminder that when a new situation comes up, you kind of have to start all over again on the acceptance journey.
Yeah. And allowing yourself to do that is a huge portion of it. I think just before we dive into some of what makes it difficult, I do want to define this as we are thinking about acceptance. So acceptance can sound easy. Often everybody has an interpretation of it, but we want to really clarify that what we're talking about when we discuss acceptance today is getting into that very non-judgmental space and accepting what is. And so when we say judgments, this is when it becomes difficult and wide, because judgment is anything from feeling like it's not good or bad, or feeling like we should do something else, or wishing that facts were different, that the past experiences were different, or that some outcome was different, some process was different. Those are all judgments that things should be different, things are better, things are worse. Acceptance is whether you're looking at something that you feel good about or you feel bad about, accepting what is and getting into the facts of it and accepting just the brutal, true reality of things, and without judgment. And that is why it is so hard to get to, because it is so tied to the judgments that we feel. And that's why we have to give ourselves some grace in re-entering that acceptance pipeline every time something new comes up, because we do have to get to there. And that takes that practice of really letting go of judgment. And that means knowing our own assumptions, knowing our own judgments, knowing where we might be falling into something that is no longer helpful for us and not really accepting the situation. And it's so easy to accept an emotion and believe it is the truth of a situation, or our reaction is the truth of a situation, where it's really just, it's not the same as the actual facts of the situation that we need to work with.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And also accepting that even calling it brutal reality is a judgment. So it's just reality.
Oh, yeah. I regret that word choice immediately.
It's just reality. It's not brutal. It just is.
Yes. Yes. That's a good clarification. It is not. Yeah, I'm already not practicing acceptance. This is difficult. But that is a really important clarification, because it is about the reality and knowing that it doesn't actually come with judgment. The reality is the reality. And when I say brutal, that's when I feel like I'm automatically putting in my own interpretation on that. I'm interpreting this as difficult, and some things are difficult, but that's something difficult to accept. The acceptance is still about the truth beyond the difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. One piece that as part of understanding a definition of acceptance is when you stop looking for blame. So part of the accepting the past, probably the past, even the present, but mostly the past of something that has happened, is when you realize that it's not about who to blame or what to blame. That's when you realize that you're closer to acceptance. What if it's not about blame? It's just about, this is what happened. And this is who I was. And this is who the other people were. And that's it. It's not, I was wrong, they were right. They are to blame for something that they did, or I am to blame for something I didn't do, or vice versa. There's just no blame. That's just a fact. That's just who we are. And then we can move on. At that point, that's why the next one is conscious choice, which we'll speak to in a different episode, and why it's easier to get to conscious choice when we can finally just sit in the acceptance of what is or what was.
Yeah. I remember going through the training, and they talked about one of the foundation principles in iPEC is like there are no mistakes. You can't make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember which one it is, but
you cannot make a mistake.
Yeah. And they were like, this is our simplest and most difficult one to go. And so they kind of went around the room and asked people like, what's a mistake you feel like you made? And people would offer things like all over the map, but there are some that are as easy as like, or as simple to look at as like, oh, I was in a high school football game, and then I threw an interception, and then we ended up like costing us the championship or something like that. It feels like a mistake, but they kept asking like, well, when did you know it was a mistake? When did you know it was a mistake? And it's always after and looking back. And so it's a reminder that at the time you're doing what you can, you're doing what, and getting to that acceptance can be very challenging process, but the acceptance is knowing that that's what was true at the time. That's that all of those things were true. This is who I was. This is what happened. These were all the influencers that were on me at the time. And that's the reaction, the choice, the response that ended up coming out of that. And whether we know after the fact or before, there's peace to be found in acceptance, but only by really fighting to the reality of acceptance.
Yes, that did not sound complicated at all.
Yeah, that was really convoluted.
Yeah, I like how you brought up the mistake principle, because that also took me a long time to accept as a principle and understand it. And it really comes down to how you described it. We can only judge something as a mistake after it happened and when things don't work out. Because if things do work out, then it wasn't a mistake. And that's when you know, at that moment, when things are happening, when we are doing something, given the tools, the knowledge, the influencers, who we are at that moment, we cannot make a mistake, because the judgment is always afterwards. If things don't work out, then we judge it as a mistake.
Yeah. And it's the things that get really difficult to parse in acceptance is that sometimes it feels like we have to endorse something to accept it. And that's, again, a judgment. It's like saying like, it's good that this happened. That's not the same thing as saying it happened. It happened is acceptance. It's good that this happened is at best a reframe, at worst just I don't know. It's a judgment. It's a delusion into what could or would have been.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not an endorsement. It's not a condoning. What happened is just not trying to change it and accepting it as it was, as it is, because then we can move on. Otherwise, we're stuck.
That's be especially hard in moments like grief, and where whatever kind of loss you're feeling, whether it's an actual like loss of life or just loss of a job, an identity, a friendship, a relationship, an item that was precious to you, whatever it is. Acceptance is really the reality that it has happened, and that's not the same thing as being okay with it. It's just knowing that, or liking that it happened, or being, again, condoning it. It's just accepting that it is. This is what is, and these are the choices that I have.
Yes. Yeah. So, should we coach?
Sure. Yes. One thing I do want to specify also, just a couple of different ways to cut acceptance. There's things like self-acceptance, knowing yourself. There's past acceptance. And there's also a little delineation between process and outcome acceptance, where you can accept that there's a process going on and that you're kind of in the middle of that, and what are the choices being made along the way, and also acceptance of outcome, which tends to be harder when we aren't necessarily happy with the outcome, but it's still an acceptance thing of this is what the outcome was, and that's that's our set of facts moving forward. And it's also okay to accept that we can have, emotional reactions and influencers throughout these. Accepting that we do have a reaction is part of this whole process. So I just want to add those little bits of color into when we talk about acceptance, and then we're going to see how close we can get to acceptance, since I've already put my foot in the judgment pile like 3 times on the way to explaining this. So let's try this with coaching.
Yeah, those are very good clarification, especially for the process, which is really important when you think about the fact that just because we have this discipline and we have the tools to move through it, it doesn't mean that the process is not important. It doesn't mean that the process is now a shortcut of thinking like, well, just move to acceptance and not go through what you're feeling. Like, no, part of that is accepting that the process of accepting the feelings and going through them is going to be there. The judgment is going to be there. The pain is going to be there. That is fully acceptance.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because otherwise it feels like, well, I'm not accepting it because I'm still feeling something about it. Like, accept that you're feeling something about it.
Yes.
That's what you have to accept now.
Yes. And accept that that's the normal way to do things. That the process is the process. There's no right or wrong. There's no normal or abnormal. I did it too. It's just the process, however long it takes.
Mm-hmm. Trust the process, which is another one we'll get to eventually. But I think that's why acceptance is so easy to sometimes logically understand and hard to get to emotionally. But when you do viscerally feel that acceptance, I definitely fell for this. I've had a couple like hard situations where I got to acceptance and I was like, oh, this is what they mean by acceptance. And I really understood it more viscerally. And then the next trap I fell into was the next time something hard came along, I was like, I'll just get to acceptance. And I did the exact thing we just described of trying to shortcut this process and trying to, so knowing about this is super helpful. And also knowing that it's still a process every single time is really helpful to remind yourself, because it's not just about knowing this and jumping to the front of the line.
Yeah, indeed. All right, back to coaching.
Yes. The infamous question. I feel like whatever way it's answered, it's always off. Who's going to start?
I'm going to be not in acceptance, but in complete judgment that it's going to be painful either way.
Phenomenal. Can't wait. Which is good acceptance and awareness all at the same time. That this is dead. We've done this sometimes. We know it's about to happen.
So I will leave the choice to you. I think I made the choice the last time. So
yes. Classic punt.
Never happens.
All right. I will volunteer as coachee.
All right. Probably should have made that decision on my own.
Yeah, see, every time it's the wrong one.
I do not accept your choice. I do accept the fact that I asked you to choose, and no, I'm not happy with it.
Acceptance of a little intuitive hit.
All right, so you're the coachee. Ooh, okay. Then I get to bring out the big guns.
Here we go.
With the question that I really was looking forward to writing down to ask somebody else, not to be on the receiving end of. So think about 1 or 2 of the most disappointing experiences you've had in your life. And tell us what happened, why it was so disappointing to you, and what made it so difficult to accept the outcome.
Christ. Okay.
We can start with an easier one if you want.
I mean, we're in it now. 2 of the most disappointing experiences you've had. What am I willing to talk about in public? God.
We can start with an easier one.
No, I'm just so here's my internal dialogue that's going on right now. There's many options that come up, and the difficult part about having done enough coaching at this point, both on the coaching and receiving end, is that I know there's value to be had in diving into the particularly painful ones, and like every scenario where you actually have to go deeper, it's more painful to go do that. So, Where to go? What to choose? I'm gonna go with actually one that has a lot to do with some feelings of kind of a lot of different things. So it was getting into applying for colleges. So I was applying for colleges at the end of high school, and I had gotten straight A's through high school. I'd done a ton of AP classes. I'd had some extracurriculars. I did all the things that I thought you were intended to do when you want to go to like a good school, and you're supposed to be able to apply to great programs, and you've put yourself up for success. And I was trying to do all the things that people were saying are important to get into good colleges, and like especially like well-known or prestigious, I guess, colleges. I have a lot less feelings now of like caring whether that had happened, just to be clear. But at the time, it was really difficult to accept when I had gotten through all this, done all of this work, and I was not accepted to any of the top colleges that I had applied to. And I got into good programs in a few places, but the ones that I'd really hoped for, like Stanford, I'd really hoped for, especially because my aunt had worked there for a little bit. My dad had gone there for graduate school, and I thought maybe some legacy would help, since that's supposed to help. Turns out that's not what really helps. And then also getting good grades was not what helped. Getting good test scores was not what helped. It was not, none of it was enough to get through that. And so it was the acceptance of that was, it was an entirely different kind of shift in identity, I think, of, this is who I thought I was. This is who I'd really focused a ton on academics and tried to fill out a college resume, essentially, and found out that, whatever you do, up to that point, I'd always been able to work a little harder, do a little more, get a better grade, do whatever I needed to do to get to some kind of goal. And that was the goal that it all felt like it had been moving towards, and it was not to be. So it was hard to accept, like, oh, well, what was the point of doing all of that? Why was that? And then try to understand what was actually important about that, and what does this mean? And they put so much pressure on colleges, and they did, especially at the time I was applying, that it was basically like a defining point of your life. Like, you get into a good college, you're set for life. You get into other colleges, and best of luck. I guess you'll hopefully get through somewhere somehow. And that's at least that's how it felt, and that was the interpretation I had. And that was there's so many judgments flying from all directions, particularly from schools and people you kind of look to trust at that time to tell you what's important, and only to find out that they're entirely wrong and they have no idea what they're talking about. All of those were difficult lessons, I think, to come into that level of acceptance of like what. And it was really hard to accept, I think, for me that I didn't feel like enough at that point. I had done so much, and it wasn't enough. It didn't pay off. I wasn't good enough. All of the gremlins, that it was just an absolute gremlin feeding party after midnight on that one, of like, here's everything that I did, and it wasn't enough, and you're not enough, and you can't do this, and you thought you were different or able to do something else, and turns out you're not. So that was, I think, what was really difficult to accept at the time. It was a huge identity shift. I'd been, top or next to top of my class for so long, and I assumed that was enough. And I assumed that doing all these things that I'd been told were important was enough. And it turns out I'd done just not enough of, I guess, the right things or whatever else. And there was just too many people, and I just didn't have whatever competitive edge needed to be had. And it was hard to accept that on its face, and kind of as an identity shift.
Yeah, that's that's totally understandable. That's a big identity attachment, especially how the societal norm and how much pressure is put on that. The attachment to all the work that you've done, that you did to get there, and having it impact the very core of any of our gremlins, which is not good enough. That has a huge impact on just full identity and what happens afterwards. So how true, in hindsight, how true is it that you were not good enough?
In most ways, not really true. In some ways, I don't think I was thinking about the world in quite the right way. There have been a few vindications in recent months, even of like there's all the college admission scandals and how like when I say I had legacy, like I had some people who attended these schools in my past. Turns out legacy means the people who are continually donating millions of dollars to these institutions and have all kinds of sway. It's not just somebody who also happened to attend. So that was one. So that all that those scandals breaking are like, oh, okay. So I was entirely wrong about my interpretation of what that meant. And then things like now colleges are like, oh, we're not going to worry about SAT and ACT scores, which was, I mean, the antithesis of everything we were told when I was going through. Like those were almost the most important thing. And hopefully you have a filled out resume beyond that, but your GPA and your test scores better be up there. And I knew at the time, like even as a high school student, I was like, this isn't a measure of who a person is or what they're capable of doing. This is just a test. Like this is clearly not applicable to anything else in life. And over the next decade, there were lots of research going out that was like, this is not an indicator of actual success. And then now colleges are like, we don't even need some of those test scores. So in retrospect, there's been a lot of external validation for it's not really true that you weren't good enough or that these things weren't. It was measured on something else. And I also came to realize like what was the good enough I was really looking for. I mean, what does that mean to be good enough? And I don't know that I have it. There's not an answer for that because I like you're taught for so long. It's like something almost universal. It's some weird formula of all of the numbers that they've put on you to measure you for so long, and then that either passes muster or it doesn't. And I just don't. I'd never really thought that was a great way of evaluating people, but I was playing the game because that's what you're kind of asked to do, and I never thought it was like an okay way to do it. But there's no way around it. That's how they're going to judge you at the time. So in retrospect, I was always still the same person before and after, and I still had much more capability to grow. It was just such a defining moment of feeling like this is everything you worked for, and either this is kind of like it'll put you in one line or another. Either you're going to go on and be successful, or you're going to go on and struggle. And that was a false dichotomy. That was all not true. And it wasn't about being good enough, and it wasn't. And then later, I found out that my college year was the highest level of application, like for all colleges. So that was the beginning of the end, I think, for colleges being able to hold on to the idea that you do this based on merit. It was a big learning experience that the system that will tell you 1,000 times over that it is a meritocracy and about how hard you work is not. And it's about a dozen different things, and a lot of those are out of your control. And all you get to do is control the things you can control, and back to acceptance, kind of accept the things that you can't, and accept what the realities of that are. And that's always a hard line to find. In retrospect, it was hard to know what was true and what you should reject for how people are judging you and not. And it led to the beginning of a very long process of starting to figure out what is a framework to actually judge yourself on, and when do you feel like you're living up to what your values are and what's good enough for you, and when are you enough? And of course, the answer ultimately is that you're enough regardless. You're always going to be enough, even if it's hard to see. And it has to be down to you to find and believe that. So that's a very long-winded answer to say it's not true, and it was difficult internally and externally to get to feeling like that wasn't true. And also it was not well defined for me at the time. Looking back, I didn't have an idea of what good enough was. It was just like good enough felt like you get accepted to a college or you don't. And so I guess in that way it wasn't enough to get accepted. And it wasn't the same thing as not being good enough as a person, or as my capabilities that I've been trying to build that whole time.
Yeah, makes sense. There's a lot there. The external validation in a way, or the external events to debunk that, and the internal journey. And so when you think about your internal journey to accept one that you didn't get accepted, and you're still good enough. When do you believe that started, and how did it start?
Yeah, there are a few different pieces. I met Rachel in college, and she'd been through a very similar experience, but she was really really excelled at academics and did honestly a lot more than, in retrospect, if I looked at our resumes, I would have been much more impressed by her resume than mine. And she still had a hard time getting into colleges, and we ended up at a college where we were both like, we kind of thought we would be somewhere else. And so meeting someone else like that made me realize that there's more of the world out there. I wasn't either just an exception, and I just felt like I had been, for lack of a better term, special than wasn't. And then I wasn't alone in that. And then I also just started to realize that I still had choice. This choice seems to have been made for me, that I could go to this, and I could go here, couldn't go here. And I felt like that was like, okay, well, here's your options. And somebody else made that choice for you. And in that way, they did. Somebody else does make that choice. The college board or the acceptance committee or whatever at these colleges makes that choice. But it wasn't the same as like, that's the end of the story. I still had choices I could make for what I could do. And that ended up being, in retrospect, on a long enough timeline, this became understanding that you had to create your own meaning. And I appreciate now what it did for me to have that kind of shaking up early in life of like, you can do what everybody will tell you is the thing to do to move forward. And not only is it not going to be your definition of moving forward, it's not going to be it's not always going to be enough. I mean, we see this in corporations all the time, right? Here's all the things you should do on your performance evaluation, and you could knock it out of the park, just blow it away, and be great at that. And if the budget cycle is not right, or other people were in line for that promotion, or whatever it is, whatever that step is, it still might not work out for you the way that you're hoping, in terms of an immediate external validation. And so I learned a lot about over time not attaching to those structures, but it was such a defining feature of education up to that point, that you're supposed to be on those structures and listening to what all the things you should do and all the ways you're going to be ranked by other people, and that's what matters, is what other people say about you and where they put you in the rank and file. And it was so not that, like, life isn't about that. And the more you can let go of that, the more you get to end up choosing your own path, which is always going to be more satisfying than figuring out what other people are asking of you and trying to fit that and wondering why you're not happy, even if you do get the chance to fit that mold.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. That's a long journey, and there's a lot in that path to go through to get to that. And it's very common as well. I mean, there's so much pressure into doing what others think you should be doing and not breaking free from that. And then when you get to the point where you feel like you have broken free, then you have to go through it again, and then go through it again, and then go through it again, for many different things. So if you think about the journey you've gone through and the process of freeing yourself from doing things because that's what others think you should be doing, and accepting that you have the choice ultimately to accept who you are and do what you want to do, and accept what those journeys are. What is the impact of being on this side of acceptance?
It's so much more freedom, because the thing that I got hooked up on, or really hooked into and caught up on, I'm just mixing phrases all over the place today. I got hooked into the idea that there is some kind of structure you're supposed to abide by, and that you can basically walk up that structure and it will be well defined for you, and you can get to some type of in my mind undefined success that I was trying to chase, or thought that was the thing to do. The impact of being on the other side is realizing that that's not true, and it gives you so much more freedom just to do what you think is the right thing to do, rather than what you think. I'm not saying I do this all the time. It's just easier to now remember it. It's not what the other people are saying you should do. when you feel like there's something that you should be doing, and I don't mean that in the like obligation sense, where you just kind of have that inner voice that says, yeah, everybody's telling me I like go get a certification or something, but I don't know if that's necessary, or I'm going to try doing this another way. It gave me over time a lot more trust in that intuition, and I think that's been endlessly valuable, because there's for as helpful and as good intentioned as a lot of like the structures are to try and help people see their own growth and picture it and have some kind of tangible structure or scaffolding to pursue it. It can never really capture each individual person. And so until you can get in touch with that for yourself, until I got in touch with that, I didn't have the freedom to let go of all of that expectation and just know that all the voices, I mean, it was so many voices, parents, teachers, administrators, college applications, going to things that are telling you how to apply for college. Everything was geared towards that as like some type of external validation, and they're trying to help you get to those. And it's not that they're bad intentions. It's just that they could be totally wrong for what's actually helpful for you. And none of it is designed to understand who you are or what you might be important to you. And so it's easier now to identify the voices of like, oh, this is clearly like I'm feeling a push to do this because of other people. And then you have a chance to evaluate whether you want to agree with those people or whether you just don't feel like that applies for you. And that's been the biggest impact, has been being able to let go in more scenarios. And it's an endless work in progress, but being able to let go in more scenarios of what other people are expecting and trying to trust that voice. It's like, yeah, but I think this is the thing that I need to do, even if other people would do it differently.
Yeah, that's very powerful to be able to recognize those. So what helps you when you get to those moments, that journey, that start all over again and accepting and silencing the voices? What helps you move through the acceptance journey and the internal piece of not letting outside expectations influence what you do?
There's a couple things that come to mind. First, journaling is almost always my answer to so many of these, is because it's I have to like process for myself where it is. What I'm getting better at, and what it took me forever to get more comfortable with, I mean, this is something I'm really within like the last year getting a little bit more commonly comfortable with, is reaching out to people and talking it through and being able to share that. Because part of the reason that I think it was so slow to recover from this kind of feeling of rejection after the college applications was that I felt alone in that. I felt like, and I wasn't going to share it with people. I was ashamed of the fact that it hadn't worked out the way I'd wanted it to. And I felt like people had expectations that I could do something, like I could get into some fancy college or something. And I was living in those expectations. I felt like I'd let them down. I'd let myself down. And I was unwilling to ask for any support. It was another part of like not feeling good enough. It's like, why bother asking them to go give more time and effort or have other expectations when I couldn't deliver on this? And now, and this is also a very much a work in progress, but I can see in retrospect how much easier it is to process and get through these things if I'm willing to share that, for one, because it just puts some light on it. It's like putting a spotlight on your gremlin, putting light on your shame. It can dramatically reduce the volume and the impact of that circling in your head, just by itself, just by speaking it out loud. And when you have somebody else, and when you can find that team of supportive people that you can turn to, and that can take a while too, that makes a huge difference in getting through some of that. And that's when I know, like, I'm falling into this. I'm starting to feel like other people's expectations are sliding in, or I don't feel like I have control or choice over this. That's when it's very necessary and very difficult. Same with all of acceptance. It's always the most difficult when it's the most necessary. But I'm seeing in retrospect, the times that it has become much easier when I'm willing to share that, when I'm willing to like open up about that and connect with other people and just ask, ask for help. It's just stating it and just having somebody to listen. It makes a tremendous difference.
That's very good self-awareness and accepting that that's the journey. that to go through. What can help you in the future to recognize when you're slipping out of acceptance or slipping into letting others, the external opinions, chime in?
It's actually similar to what I was talking about when we were talking about awareness. I think I'm outside of acceptance. First of all, I guess there's the awareness portion where when there's fewer voices in my head, when there's like just one reacting voice, and those are the voices where it's that when something is starting to take over that is just clearly reacting, not responding, but just like it's a voice that's like upset or angry or just the voice that's telling me to go not talk to people. When that starts to be the only voice I'm really listening to, and I'm not even like consciously aware of the other voices, I know I'm in more of a tunnel at that point. So if I can notice that, that's step one, and step two would be knowing when the other thing that helps is when I notice all the judgment words appearing in that stream of conscious, when I'm telling myself about should, or no one else is going to let me, or when I have those feelings of, oh, there's some gatekeeper here that may or may not let me do whatever this is. When I'm stuck in that rut, and I'm in so much judgment about like, it was really bad that this happened, or I really should have done this, or here's the things that I could have done better. That's when I know that I'm way off the acceptance train and I'm way down judgment. Harder to get out of that in the moment. Yes. But that's why journaling helps, and talking it out helps a lot, because even just saying it out loud or putting it down on paper in stream of conscious way it's pretty easy to see when those should show up, because you're literally typing them out or writing them out on your journal, and you see them and you're like, oh my God, here it is. Why am I saying should? And that's when I can it's those like little like freeway exits where you can have a chance to step back, get onto a curiosity avenue instead of judgment highway.
New Monopoly pieces. Let's all get a Monopoly with Curiosity Avenue and not build anything on judgment space. Yeah, right. Yeah. What else could help you process acceptance?
It's about reminding myself that you have to lean into the things that you don't want to accept, and the things that are difficult are true just as much as the things that aren't difficult or don't feel difficult. They are not inherently difficult. That's the whole point of acceptance. They're not inherently difficult. I'm treating them as difficult. I'm interpreting them as difficult. Knowing when I'm stepping away from that is the huge portion of it. When I'm down the rabbit hole of all the interpretations, that's when I know I'm not in acceptance. I need to be more aware of that I'm getting into a tunnel vision. I'm not seeing that there are choices. I'm starting to believe that things are predetermined. It's all very level one energy when that gets into it, and with the occasional spike of like a level two, like I can't believe this is the way this is, like, but still all kind of some victim energy of like there's nothing that can be done, and if I can see it that way, I can try and find better choices.
How can you turn that need to want to choose to?
That's a good question. I guess when I say I need to, I don't feel the should as much as I used to. I need to, in that I know that it's the way forward. I know that this is what I want to have happen, that I want to be able to be in that conscious choice and acceptance more often, that I don't want to just turn away from the things that are difficult. And that every time I do that, it ends up, it's just it's like the mental weight accrues interest rapidly. Just the weight of not addressing it, of not turning into it. It'll only build. And so I want to have the energy to do other things. I want to address those hard portions head on. And I want to be that kind of person who does that. I want to be in that state of more conscious choice and power. And when I think about that person, it's much more aspirational. It's the vision that you want to be part of. It's the hope that you're there for, not the one that you feel like you need to be, but the one that you want to be.
Good way to turn into a want to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How complete do you feel with this mini coaching session?
Very complete. I feel it's, again, this is a great example of just voicing some of these things out loud, because this is like voicing some of the abstract patterns out loud, which is really helpful, I find. And one of the things I love about doing and being coached, I know that, and in specific instances, I need to open up, and I don't have one that I need to open up about like right now that is weighing on me. But recognizing this and being able to say this out loud, that there's just a chance to say out loud that, oh, it does help to reach out, and I do want to be in better acceptance, and practicing that better is just, it's good reflection on what I want the process to become.
Very good reflection and awareness and acceptance of the process.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Only stepped in it a couple times.
Come full circle. All right. How do you feel about switching?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right.
How do you feel about switching?
Not good at all.
Let's unpack that a little bit. What's got resistance coming up? We're just diving right in now. What's got resistance coming up on the switch?
Oh, just that a lot of what you mentioned, which is I'm honestly concerned about the questions you're going to ask, and in the darkness I'm going to have to face if I actually want to go through the process as intended and truly accept whatever is going to come up.
That is entirely understandable. That was exactly what I was feeling stepping into this, and I know that's just, it's difficult to have to face that, and I know that you've done so much coaching work. You know some of your own processes, and you know that stepping into the darkness is often the way forward, and what needs to be done, and is excruciatingly painful to do sometimes, or can feel incredibly scary to step into.
Yes.
So let's start with some awareness of acceptance. Then what do you believe is your biggest obstacle in learning to accept everything you are and do?
That it means I'm not right.
Say more about that.
I would say accepting without judging is extremely difficult. Looking for ways to validate our existence, my existence, as good or bad, as enough or not enough, as right or wrong. It's so ingrained, almost in the way we look at things, the way we look at the world, the way we look at our lives, that accepting that's judgment, and accepting that it holds me back, and it's not reality, because reality just is reality, and it's a different perspective. It really puts everything on its head, and then it makes it unknown. I'm trying to not use the word difficult, but it increases the amount of unknown. If I'm not good enough, because that's a judgment, or I'm not right, or I'm not capable, in the sense of in a ratings, in some sort of outside voting, or inside voting, then who am I?
Interesting. So it feels like there's almost some tie-in between the self-identity or what you identify as, and feeling like that has to be enough, and then that who you are is enough. But then if you're stuck in some judgment, then you're maybe losing who you are, or losing that concept of who you are.
Yeah, indeed. The other big piece that acceptance is hard for, it was hard, and it still is, but it's a constant journey to accept. And the value of it is the fact that there's a part that's almost missing in that journey. And now it's missing from my head too, because I can't remember what I wanted to say. So it's deep. It's the part of admitting that we are responsible for what happens to us. And so, especially when a difficult situation happens, when we feel pain, when we suffer through certain situations, big traumatic traumas notwithstanding, caveat, but more daily manageable situations, that we had a part in it, that it wasn't just somebody else doing something to us. It wasn't just somebody else treating us poorly. Yes, they have their part in it, and our part in it is also holding on to that pain. Our part in that is maybe we didn't show up as well as we could have. Maybe we were in our best selves and in mastering at that point or afterwards. That how long we hold on to that wrongdoing, it's entirely our choice. And that's probably been one of the reasons why my acceptance journey, as in the discipline itself, has taken years, not days, not weeks, not a few coaching sessions, but years to finally get to that and say, like, yes, I have a part in this. I am just as responsible. 50% of this is me. And so can I accept that as not a flaw in who I am, but in just the reality of things.
Yeah, that's really well put. That sounds like it's tying into what you were talking about the not enough is almost an identity judgment, that I have to be enough, and then knowing that accepting comes without judgment. It's hard to know your own responsibility in situations where you may feel that either the outcome wasn't what you wanted, or you didn't show up how you wanted, or it wasn't something that for lack of a better term, and this is obviously going to be a bit of a judgment word, it's not the desirable outcome. It's not the desired outcome.
Yeah.
Which is our own judgment that we put on that. And it's something we do all the time. And it's something we as humans, we are such socially driven creatures. It's so easy to rank ourselves, and we do it to others, and we do it to ourselves, and we worry where we are and what that will mean for us. What do you think? What story comes up for you when you are telling yourself that you are responsible for something, that you are partially responsible for something that you may either have a hard time accepting, I guess is really that you are responsible?
Well, I would say the beginning of the story is very much just Gremlin 3D feast of chicken after midnight in diving in a pool of Niagara Falls water. So the multiplication of the power of the gremlin is just, it feels infinite. Because it really feeds into the not good enough, the being excluded, that not having a place anywhere really in the world, the being alone. So it's just a complete fireworks of all those feelings that as humans are very difficult, because we are hardwired for acceptance of being accepted in the group. So that we're not alone, so that we can combat all the threats that are outside of us and inside of us. And then once, I would say what's helped me move through that and not get overwhelmed by the riots of all the gremlins, is recognizing That's really interesting, because also as I say it, it's still very externally validated, or as I think about it, it's still very externally validated. It's a little bit, I would say it's a little bit connected to what you have mentioned, is when I can dig deeper enough into my own intuition and trust that at the core before the logic of the mind comes in and does its own peanut gallery conversations on that. That's when I know. When I can say, I know. And it's beyond data and proof and information and comparison to the past or comparison to others, when it's just something that deep of just knowledge and belief and trust. That's I've experienced that enough to know that that's where I have to go to. And I can't get there if I don't accept that I am responsible for what happens to me and the choices I make.
Makes sense. So it's important to have that acceptance to get into the feeling that you are who you are. You can access that intuition better, which makes sense that it would also be maybe harder to do that if you don't have the acceptance, especially if the acceptance then starts to change your concept or hide the concept, I suppose, of who you know you are at other times. If that starts to be hidden away, it's much harder to access that intuition. I do want to tap on something you're talking about. Talked about, you feel like, the worry about belonging, that maybe I don't belong in this group, or I'm going to be excluded, or which is viscerally attached to our survival instincts as a human. Like we need people, and so that sense of belonging is as threatening as feeling like we are staring down a saber-toothed tiger that is physically going to eat us. That belonging is viscerally tied to survival, and belonging is such a core portion of it. You mentioned that if you realize that parts of that are externally validated. So I'm curious for you, what parts of belonging are internal? What do you need internally?
I would say it helps to go back to how Brené Brown talks about belonging and how we can't really belong anywhere if we don't belong to ourselves first. And so that's a good kind of mantra and reminder. Because it feels, the way belonging to ourselves first feels like it's truly accepting who we are and knowing that we're not going to do things perfectly all the time, because that's also judgment. But it's not about being perfect, and it's not about being unapologetic. Actually, I would say it is about being apologetic and being comfortable with that. And recognizing that we go through situations and we go through to interacting with others and interacting with ourselves. And when things don't work out well, that's not final. We can still improve. We can still learn. We can still connect. And we can still recognize when the belonging, the external belonging, it's more of a trying to fit in than actually belonging. And so, in being, I would say, in being very clear, and I would say in the journey of the last few years in understanding acceptance, I've also found that when we belong to ourselves first and we show that self, it shines enough to attract the people who will also accept you as you are. And it almost burns. It's almost too much of a power, too much of a sun burning the ones that don't. And you no longer look for that. You no longer look for fitting in. Because you know what it feels to actually belong, and you know what it feels to belong as your full self, no matter what it is at the moment, and really embrace the things that, that conversation didn't go, and or that thought, as I expressed it, didn't go well, or that action caused pain when it wasn't intended. And it's not final. I can still do something about it. Maybe not with the other person if there's no openness there, but for myself, I can still learn and accept that it's not a prediction of the rest of my life. It's not a sentence. It's just something that happened.
Those are all really great reflections. That's just well said on what belonging kind of feels like and can be. And it sounds like there's a huge portion of accepting self and who we are, as well as understanding that. And that means the times where we feel imperfect, knowing that we can't always be what we are going to judge as perfect or right or not. And knowing that there's also a thread in there that you mentioned in a couple different ways, that it's important to know that things can change, that there is growth to be had. It sounds like an acceptance that there is hope, even there's hope in some direction of change. That's with another person, with yourself, and I suppose always it kind of relates back to being part of yourself. And I'm curious, knowing all of these things that you've well elaborated about, what belonging can feel like, what helps you get into belonging to yourself, what practices can you use?
As to sound like a broken record from previous recording, meditation is absolutely a must for me to be able to get there. Actually physically feel when I haven't meditated, because I meditate in the morning almost as soon as I wake up, or a few minutes after I wake up. When I don't, let's say Friday when we were flying back, and since we had airplane time, I skipped the meditation to try and sleep longer, even though that didn't happen. I could feel by noon like something was off. I was actually getting more judgmental. I could feel the judgment. I could feel the lack of acceptance of the world around me, or even my own sensations, headache, and not feeling great, and not really knowing, how to feel my best self until the meditation happened. And I could, once I meditated on the plane, it was a huge shift. So I would say meditation is a big one. Non-judgment. So reducing it's impossible to not judge ourselves and others, but recognizing when I do. And so recognizing some of the shoulds, some of the wanting to be right, some of the stubbornness, and recognizing and starting to unpack what's my part in this. Again, without the judgment, without, like, oh, how could you do that? And I can't believe you said that. And what do you expect, to happen, when you react that way? But just looking at it and be like, was that my best self? Was that how I was there a conscious choice in that? No, there wasn't. What can I do next time? What's a conscious choice that I can make now? And really moving on. The lack of acceptance, I find it's a huge determinant of being able to move forward. And it can create a lot of getting stuck. If we're stuck in proving right or wrong, good or bad, then we're not moving forward because we're stuck there. And so recognizing when I'm getting stuck, and also thinking about, what is this costing me to be stuck here? And what are the benefits? What am I benefiting from blaming or finding right and wrong? So those helps, sound like an internal journaling and questioning of my own process.
That makes sense. That's a lot of knowing yourself and knowing where that's at. And it sounds like you have at times gotten some of that awareness of when you're in more judgmental space. You establish some of the next steps that you take when you're in that. What are ways that you can be aware of that when you're slipping into that judgment space? What helps you know that?
Language. So listening to the language in my head, what conversations am I having with myself? What conversation am I imagining I'm having with others, even though they're not there? How often are those conversations coming back? How are they not getting resolved? Why do they even exist? So really being aware of what's happening with the voices in my head. just feeling physical feeling. Am I at peace? Do my shoulders hurt? Can I sleep at night? All the physical sensations. And also, interestingly enough, I know that talking to others is part of the journey of acceptance. It's part of the putting all those demons out in the light and having others help me diffuse them. And so when I am judging myself or wanting to talk to somebody about it and opening up, or when I'm holding back, that's when I know it's even deeper. The lack of acceptance is even deeper than other ways. Like if I can just blurt things out, then I'm very close to that. If I can't, because of the self-consciousness, because of the becoming defensive, because of the just the self-judgment and the worry, that's when there's something much deeper that actually does need to be shared even more, regardless of the fear of causing rejection.
Sense. And rejection is a big one that you've kind of mentioned in a few different ways about feeling like there's worry about rejection, which is entirely normal, and it makes sense to be worried about that. What's a mantra or a way you can help yourself face down that fear of rejection?
What's a mantra? A good question. I don't know that I have a mantra. I probably should.
There's a judgment word.
Yeah. Is I judge myself for not having a mantra? Maybe I do have a mantra. I just can't think of it.
It's okay if you don't want one. Yeah, I'm just curious what it might look like if you had something, or it doesn't have to be a mantra, but what might help you face that fear of rejection. It's a powerful one.
Yeah. I would say remembering what it actually feels to belong. And knowing that it can't happen if I armor up and put masks on. And so am I willing? Oh, I have a mantra. I'm too old for this. That's my mantra. Yes. That is truly something that I've hold on to, and I use quite a lot as a mantra. It's like I'm too old. I'm too old to waste my life this way. It's like, so go out there, be, and that's it. Be. Like, how many more years can I waste trying to fit in? How many more years can I waste hiding what's actually going on? Done. It's like there's no more time.
Immediately tying in that cost. Wow, that's great. That's and it sounds like a very disarming one. Not only is it it can feel very true, but it also ties to that old movie quote. It's I'm getting too old for this shit.
Yes, that's my mantra. Getting too old for this shit. I don't want to waste energy. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste any of it. Focus. I want to have the conversations with, all the unseen parties in the shower. No, it's not worth it.
It's great awareness and tying into all your previous experiences and tying into what brings you out of that. You also mentioned that it helps to think about what belonging feels like. If you were to put a few words to that and clarify for yourself what belonging feels like, what would you say?
Authenticity, freedom, peace, laughter. Just really true, like wholehearted being without the mind creating stories.
It's unfortunate we experience absolutely none of that at Siamo.
Yeah. You feel belonging. You don't think belonging. And you feel when it's not there.
When it's not there, you're getting too old for that shit.
Exactly. Getting too old for that shit. Yeah. It's a minute, fine. A day, I'm already wasting too much time. Not worth it.
You've got great awareness always about all of these things. You have a lot of practices that help you get there. Are there any pieces, as we kind of wind down on this portion of it, are there any pieces that feel unresolved or things you'd want to explore in the future as we discuss acceptance?
Oh, I would say the acceptance is always unresolved.
Okay.
And we don't have time for all the
Yeah.
unresolved pieces. No, I think I'm good for this.
Well, thank you very much for just being open and sharing that. And those were all great observations. I think all very relatable.
I hope they are. Again, acceptance looks differently for every person.
This one is, I think, one of the most powerful disciplines. I think it opens the door to so much. And because it is so powerful, it is sometimes an absolute uphill journey to get to.
It is. And I'm glad we're done talking about it.
Fine. Easy to accept that one. Easy to accept that it's over.
Let's accept that it's over and we can move on to conscious choice in the next recording.
Conscious choice. That's the next one coming up. That's an exciting one. That one's really start to rubber hits the road. And just to leave you guys with one last thought, we were just discussing this there's a framework called adaptive action. It just goes with the questions, what, so what, now what? Yes. And that feels very much to us like kind of the first three disciplines here. We've got awareness. So what is going on? Acceptance. So what does that mean? And so what are we all, what's the full range of the actual facts and what we're maybe hoping to do? And then now what? Conscious choice. What do we do now, knowing and accepting all the things that are?
Yeah.
So look forward to next framework.
Time. Yes. Next, we're in the now what?
We're in the now what next?
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.